Hey guys, I'm Chris,
And Mike.
and welcome back to this week's No Limits, the Mitch Rapp podcast. What's new this week, Mike?
Hey, I'm just still riding high from our interview with Kyle. Last night's hangout with our patrons. We did a Code Red spoiler hangout with some of the best Mitch Rapp fans in the universe. I think I intended to stay on 30, 40 minutes. We were there, an hour and a half talking with them till 10:30
Yeah,
at night.
stayed up real late, way past my bedtime.
Dude, it was a blast, though. We got to talk Code Red and hear a whole plethora of opinions on this book.
Yeah, this has been being able to do those, and I really would like to do more of them. Is one of the best outcomes that has come out of this community, and I love the group chat. I love that we can, some days it's like really active, some weeks it's really active. Then it goes by, and then people just touch back in, and just to know that you have other people you can spin crazy ideas with, or bounce things off of, or just say, hey, have a good day. It's great. It's been besides getting to spend at least an hour every week with you, that's got to be like the second best thing that's come out of this podcast. So thanks
Dude,
to all the patrons.
it's so great. And I was so happy Chris and Sherry told us about their meetup. Two
I
of our
know.
patrons planned a meetup in person to meet Kyle and Don on the book tour. I just thought that was so cool to hear. And last week on the interview with Kyle, hearing Dawn's inspiring words about what the series and what Red War in particular has meant to her, the people we're meeting through this podcast is just really making it all worth it. We honestly, and I know we say this on the mics every week, we honestly wouldn't do this without the listeners and the patrons that we have.
Yeah, that's for damn sure. I don't think I would have felt as compelled to keep going. I feel like we always had it in our mind to do all of Mitch Rapp,
Yes.
at least up until that point. But the fact that there is this community out there that actually listens to us, sort of makes me want to, do this every week. So keeping us going.
It's so true. Man of many names, Kevin Bacon, Kevin B. Chill. He goes by many handles. When he joined the chat recently, that was awesome. We got Matt P. jumping in. Matt P. even gave us a theory. We kind of asked Kyle about it a little bit. Maybe when we cover the transition to Don, we'll talk about Matt's theory. But dude, they're amazing. And so if you want to join this community, get in on the group chat with Chris and I and everyone else, and join our hangouts. We are going to have a post-holiday hangout early in 2024. And we're also going to be taking ideas from the patrons for our upcoming reading list for the books we're going to cover on the Thriller podcast throughout next year. So planning ahead, if you want to be part of that, just go ahead and visit thrillerpod.com, click on the Patreon tab to learn more. And for less than the price of a novel a month, you can be the reason that Chris and I get to make more podcasts. So come aboard. We'd love to have you.
Boom, baby. And that was Kevin B. last night, right?
That was Kevin B. Yeah, he was going by Kevin Bacon.
Oh, yeah.
He's gone by Kevin B. Chill, as a distant relative of Haley Chill in the past. So a man of many names.
He told us he's that's one of his, it might be his favorite series is Chris Howdy. So,
yeah.
All right, what are we covering today, Mike?
Let me tell you what we're covering today. Part 2 of Code Red. We are finally getting to give our thoughts on this book and, in a sense, our thoughts on Kyle's legacy on the series, as these are the final words that he's written. And instead of a limerick for me to open this up today, I thought I would just let the limerick we left with Kyle stand. So if for some bizarre reason you skipped our interview with Kyle last week and jumped ahead to Code Red Part 2, please, please, please go ahead and visit that. We left Kyle with a nice limerick as a thank you for everything he's done. And so for Code Red, I'm going to let Kyle's final limerick stand. And I don't have one for you today. But I wanted to propose something to you, Chris, as we get into this book. There's a lot of change coming.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of change already happened, particularly around the audiobook of Code Red. And like I said, a lot of opinions from our patrons, a lot of opinions with you and I. Can we, Chris, table the audiobook talk tonight and the Steven Weber introduction to the Mitch Rapp universe? Is there any possibility you and I will be able to commit to leaving that behind right now and just letting Kyle's work stand on its own. I don't want to get bogged down by our opinions right now on the audiobook. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm really happy that our interview with Kyle was actually before the audiobook came out or the book was actually released, because it forced me to have to read it entirely, on my own. And I've since gone back and re-listened to some things just because I was intrigued to dip my toe into the audiobook, and we can say that for another time. So yeah, I think one, I've read the book, and I want to just comment on what Kyle has given us, and
Yes.
I think with time, maybe our takes on the audiobook might change. I want to give the guy, his fair shake. I think there's elements of it that I liked, elements that I didn't like, but we'll you can't judge a cover by the book. So let's not judge an audiobook by the narrator then.
And judging a cover by the book is what we'll do at the end of this podcast.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I think we got to do that. Definitely want to give him a fair shake for sure. I did listen to the audiobook twice, so I read the paper version. Yeah, I read it fully once, and I flipped through various chapters here and there. And I read the audiobook on 1 speed. Then, like I do to prep for pods, I went back on 2.5 to 3 speed, hoping maybe something will change hearing it in these different formats. And my favorite version is the paper version. And sometimes with George Goodell or Armand Schultz and Brad Thor, sometimes, and even the James Reese, Jack Carr series, sometimes I like the audiobook a little bit more. Not always. Sure. It's sometimes not true here. So we're going to talk about the hardcover and paper print edition of Code Red.
And I don't think it's like liking, maybe you do like it more, but I think sometimes the audiobook can just elevate it.
Yes.
Like to that much, to make the book that much better by
like
having
Ray
that
Porter.
edition.
Like what Ray Porter did in Only the Dead. Yeah.
Oh my God, Only the Dead, it was really good reading it, but like getting that experience takes it to the next level,
Really did. Agreed.
Anyways, we said we weren't going to do this.
Yeah.
So
hard stop. We're putting a pin in it.
Let's talk about Kyle.
We're putting a pin in it.
Last time we talked about this, where did we leave off? Mitch was going to that meet down with the guy in the. Did we get up to that?
No, we did. We did the action sequence in Sarakib and the meet with Suleiman and the building. And ultimately, he turns himself in, and we were kind of left wondering, was his sacrifice for naught? He had hoped by turning himself in as Mathieu Fournier, it would kind of release the tension, and the Syrian army might not fire on the protesters. The protesters might just dissipate if the Syrian army retreats, and that didn't happen. So there's this huge shootout. Rapp hiding under a body, in the wheel well of this truck, and just trying to not take shots as they're hightailing out of there to turn him over to the Russians. So they're on their way to that safe house where, unfortunately, that family gets executed. So what did you think about that action sequence where the Syrian guards take him and are waiting for the Russians to come, and he takes the dudes out and is kind of waiting, and he impersonates a Syrian soldier as the Russians arrive so that they underestimate him. They just brush him off to the side as just another guard, and then he can quite literally stab him in the back and take out the other guard as he's running away.
Yeah, that was pretty good. And I think, there's multiple scenes. We're going to get to a couple of them where Rapp has to check himself a little bit and build up that we see that building up of rage. And then we get to immediately see him act on that. Because originally he was just going to let things roll, right? And sort of he was very comfortable playing the poor, meek Canadian. But as soon as they kill that family that was just helpless, in the house, something clicked for him, and he was just like, oh hell no, I guess not enough to stop them, but he's always tactically minded, so maybe he couldn't, but he had to think about how he was going to do this, and boy did he that was how he got his revenge, and then how he sets up for when the Russians come and turns the tide on them.
Yeah.
Crazy. And then there's also the scene. I'm sort of jumping ahead a lot, but it kind of like relates to this. But the scene where he eventually escapes from Semenov's
Facility.
facility, and like they so underestimate him. Like they only send 2 schlubs to get him the first time, and like thought something doesn't click. That like I was trying to struggle. Like they really wouldn't suspect. I mean, I guess I don't know. Like maybe not, but no one knows he's the angel of death here.
I buy the transformation, and he's really selling it as if he's
Yeah,
this
he is.
lawyer who's in over his head.
I will say that is one part of the audiobook that I thought Steven Weber like did well, and maybe that's like why I was like cringe. See, I said I was going to talk about this, but
I'm not doing it, Chris.
I'm trying to give him a little bit of praise, and it's just it was so out of character for Mitch to do that.
Yeah,
but it's not out of character because he's trying to fully adopt this character.
Yeah. Rapp as Matthew Fournier in the audiobook is okay, right? Like this kind of scared, quaking voice that Steven Weber gives him. So I was okay with that side of things. I just don't think we transitioned back to Rapp and established enough of an identity of Rapp in the audiobook. But for another time. I
just think back to, remember when he was playing the bouncer? I think I mentioned this last time, but he was playing a bouncer for Scott. Like, it wasn't Justin Bieber. It was like a Justin Bieber type. And he wasn't fully committed to that. Like it was literally just Rapp in a suit with a ponytail, like trying to be not a bouncer, but a bodyguard, right? But here he's fully embracing his
mission,
his cover. Like the only other time that I've seen him like act this well is like, oh, remember when he impersonates Saddam Hussein's son?
Right? Oh, it was great, dude.
Yeah. Or when he impersonates a general, like doesn't he an Air Force general?
He does. I think that actually, was
Rapp's measures. A pretty good actor. Now that I think about it,
no, he is. That's easily in his wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And that goes along.
It's just when he wants to do it. When he wants to do it,
right? And that goes with something Vince established is his ability to read the room and read other people's cues. Like I think one of his main things is being able to understand, put himself in someone else's shoes, and then play to that person's weakness. Like he could very quickly pick up on people's vulnerabilities. That's why when he's yelling at Barbara Lonsdale, he's using her tells, her vulnerabilities against her, and he turns her ultimately. Even in a committee hearing, or even at the Pentagon, we saw him in Transfer Power, slamming his fists and whatnot. He's able to win those arguments, I think, not just on the merits of the logical statement he's trying to portray, but I think he's able to win those arguments because he's using his interlocutors' weak spots and playing to that. And I think so when he's undercover, he's able to do that so well. And then he combines that with the tactics. When the guy is at the well and he wants to approach the guy at the well, so he's asking if he wants some water, because that makes sense. He would approach him at a well. He doesn't understand him, so it gives him that delay because there's the language barrier. So he uses that as a delay to get closer. And he's pantomiming with his hand, sip of water, but it's really cover for him concealing a knife in the other hand.
Right.
He's able to use that skill set operationally and tactically to get the upper hand, and not to mention American Assassin. Like, even before his training, he was able to get people to underestimate him, to not show his full set of cards.
Sure.
And meanwhile, take his time to read the room. And I think tapping into that here is brilliant. I will say we skip something which might actually be perhaps one of my favorite parts of the book. I think once we talk about everything, there are some amazing action sequences, but in terms of spy writing and thinking like old school Vince third option style, one of my favorite things is the reason Rapp gets reapprehended by Semenov's crew and actually sent to Semenov's facility is the escape. He plans with Irene to go through the Israeli border. And the moment from that phone call with Irene, there's a few chapters of him going through the border wall, which I think is really cool, and how even the UN guard, doesn't even care. Mossad lets him all the way through too easily, barely checking his paperwork, at the border or whoever border security is. And then he tells the woman isn't getting close to him. So he kind of senses the ambush coming, that spidey sense. And then he gets taken with the balaclavas. And I thought it was so cool the way Ben Friedman is brought in. And Ben Friedman's mistake, if you will, his backstabbing, being a piece of shit that he is, actually makes sense geopolitically with the Golan Heights trade. And the fact that that gets Rapp in Semenov's grip, I just think is a really cool little sequence.
Yeah, and I think we mentioned this, like that stretch of chapters, it's right around 20 to like 25, some of Kyle's best writing. Right? That's right when it is, right? There's
I
just
would
after
agree.
that.
Yeah, and I think you throw in around that time when he knows Damian Losa burned him.
Right.
And so he looks for a guy similar in build to him, slips the phone into his bag, and then stakes out his apartment. And he sees the Syrians come in to try to grab him.
Yeah, that reminded me of the third option very well.
Yeah.
Like when he's Rapp is such an interesting character because he can be brute force when he wants to be brute force. He can be the shape-shifting undercover guy when he wants to be. He's also the tactician who can maneuver in and out of a city in the Middle East, Paris, England. Like, he could pop in and out of anyone, track anybody, do his SDRs, find someone like who looks like him to drop his phone, and he hides he buries himself underneath a blanket of bricks to watch this guy and to fully confirm that he was betrayed by Losa. Going back to Friedman, bringing back, we kind of mentioned that Kyle was like sort of playing all the hits, like he wanted to play in this sandbox, every single sandbox one last time, or at least have the ability to write that. I felt that the Hurley reference was like that. Bringing back Ben Friedman. The only thing that would have made it even better was like if somehow Donatello would have been here. I don't know. Yeah, and then I didn't see that coming. I did not see Friedman turning on him like that. That was out of. Did you see it coming like that?
No, I didn't. I was wondering what the play was, but it was so typical of who Ben Friedman was when we last encountered and last knew him. But he also, we knew he's good. He gets Irene to trust him, to think I'm going to facilitate this and this will, our debts will be squared away. And Rapp is even thinking like, he can't still hold a grudge about me shooting him in the leg. Like, that was where we last left off with Ben Friedman in the Situation Room, and Rapp kneecaps him. And there's no way Rapp is thinking like he's that petty. He's going to like do all this and screw over Irene Kennedy, basically put a mark on his forehead simply because he harbors a grudge like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it wasn't true. It was the Golan Heights trade. And he even says like, this is way above me and you, Mitch. And he tries to make amends with Mitch where I actually have it here. So when he's about to turn Mitch over to the Russians, he says, and I love this stuff. It's so Ben Friedman. It's such good spy writing. He's like, the Russians wanted the drug cartel's lawyer. That's who I'm turning over. I am not working for the Russians, providing them intelligence, so I don't need to tell them your real identity. I am turning over the lawyer they asked for, and that's my end of the bargain. And Israel gets the Golan Heights agreement from the Syrians for this. That kind of horse trading, quid pro quo, I think is really, really cool. And Ben Friedman says this: it's the way of the world, isn't it, Mitch? We bleed and the politicians make speeches. Our prime minister will go over Irene's head to your president, and they'll do some backroom deal that benefits them both. In the event you die, Irene will undoubtedly find ways to make my life miserable for a few years, but nothing more. She understands her place. We both do. I've instructed my men to remove the handcuffs before they take you across. There's no reason for the Russians to see you, and we'll play to that perception. Good luck, Mitch, and I mean that sincerely. Fuck you, Ben, and I mean that sincerely, too. That line landed so hard when I first read it. It landed so hard. And then I listened to Steven Weber's audio recording of it, and I was so fucking bummed. Sorry, I broke the rule. I gotta say, I was so bummed with how lame Rapp's response came off. It was the lamest. Fuck you, Ben. I mean that sincerely, too. Like, bro, that is not the tone Rapp would have in that moment with Ben Friedman. Sorry, I went there.
Yeah, no, I read that, and like I said, we're right in this wheelhouse of Kyle's. Some of his best, what I think is some of his best writing, and some of the best writing of this book.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this book takes like some weird. It's very rap centric. We're like with rap pretty much the entire time, right?
Yeah. It's true.
I feel like that's fitting. It makes sense. He wants to, it's kind of like clinging on to this character. I don't want to let it go. I don't even want to waste my time going to another character. I guess in the beginning we get a little bit of Losa, back and forth to Damien, but then after that we're just with Rap. And so after this, he is able to escape, gets turned back over. This man's still able to get out again. This after being underestimated again. Like he gets, and then this is where we truly realize, or Mitch realizes what's going on. Like
Yeah.
we as a reader, we kind of knew what was going on, but we get it fully explained to us when Semenov tries to interrogate him. Obviously, thinks that he knows everything about the cartel's operation. He wants it all. Lays out these unrealistic plans. Is gonna torture him, and then, but I think ultimately, Rap realizes that he can no longer sit idly by.
Yep.
This is now all right. They had their fun, but this can't happen. So and that's really where he sort of takes a turn and realizes, all right, my debt with Damian Losa doesn't matter anymore, right?
Right. I think I was satisfied with how that storyline transitioned because
Mm-hmm.
in part one, we were both a little hesitant getting into the drug market, right? The Arab drug incursion in Europe.
I was like, how does this gonna? Why does Mitch care about this at all?
Yeah. Why does Mitch care and why should we care? And
Yeah.
I didn't know if it did enough to drive the plot. I think the Semenov conversation at the facility when Rapp's turned over by the Israelis, I think unlocks a big part of the plot that I'm jiving with. Like Scorecard, if I was going to give 10 points in the plot in the first half, just setting up the European drug trade and Losa's wanting to analyze the Captagon, tablets and get the read of the land, it's like a 2-3, maybe a 4. But once we hear the maniac that Semenov is and his
Right.
plans to triumphantly return to the Kremlin, and this whole drug thing is part of his larger plan in the Russian asymmetrical warfare manifesto, if you will. Once that clicks for Rap, it clicked for me. And he's like, this is more about a drug trade and settling my debt with some Mexican, right? He's like, this is actually about us all being pawns and the whole Syrian conflict being pawns in a Russian attack on the West. And the Ferrari line is perfect. Like Kyle's got the zingers when he's telling Rap is, I think, telling, I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was Losa. I think it was. He's giving Losa the dump on what he's learning. And he's like, you hand a Russian the keys to a Ferrari, they're not going to even want to drive it. They're just going to want to use the keys to scratch up everyone else's car and destroy everyone else. And Rap's like, that's Semenov. And so, like, if I don't stop this, it has nothing to do with them making money. The drug is losing them money.
Right.
It 100% has to do with him infiltrating the West. And now the xenophobia of the Arab attack in Salerno and all the other things going on, this fear of the migrants, they were stoking that, right? It's all manufactured. It's not that people hate each other, de facto. It's that it's being stoked so someone can manipulate you. And now Semenov's plan is to do that with the border crisis in America, with Latino stereotypes, now blaming them for causing America's downfall and addiction to this drug. And that's, I think it's a really crazy plan. And one other thing that elevates it for me, Irene Kennedy describes Semenov as perhaps the world's most dangerous person.
Yeah, it was spooky, the chilly when she describes that.
That was chilly. So we've got Claudia warning Damian Losa is an evil, fucked up Irene Kennedy, a dark Irene Kennedy. You've got Kennedy warning Semenov is one of the most dangerous people in the world. I think Kyle's crafting some really, really good villains. And just here's a quote on what I'm talking about Semenov, just to cap it all off. Semenov was a visionary who understood humanity's weakness and had a gift for exploiting them. If he could create sufficient chaos, could he divide the West? Could he break up the European Union and replace America's democracy with an authoritarian who promised stability and order? The cost of defending against his programs and repairing the damage when we fail is astronomical. If there's anyone more dangerous in the world right now, I can't think of who. He's not just constantly reinventing asymmetrical warfare. He's actively waging it. That's chilling. And that coming from Kennedy is even more chilling.
Yeah, I liked Semenov a lot. I don't know if we want to jump to the end, but I didn't like how he went out so easily, though. Did that jibe with this mastermind? I mean, I guess he's ultimately weak, right? And Kyle does do a good job of setting that up in the sense that, yeah, he wears a general suit, but he never earned any of the medals. He's more of a frilly, likes his finer things in life. Was relegated to this thing. I don't know. He was built up to be this bigger, genius, and then Rapp was able to easily get him, and like in the end, I mean, it was pretty ingenious plan. Like, can we talk about the ending a little bit? Like, there's some things, I don't know. There are a couple of things I want to talk about in the build up, because essentially, it's a couple chapters, but Rapp and team spend, what is it, almost 2 months in country? Like,
yeah, prepping.
A couple weeks prepping, like waiting for this op to happen. Like, that was pretty crazy. Like, we rarely get time lapses like that in these stories.
I think I will just respond with that. The fact that the action set piece at the end was meticulously planned. So getting Semenov, I wouldn't say was easy. Maybe the fact in the latter chapters, the very ending chapters, that he's working for us essentially, right? That he's providing us all this information. Maybe that's a little too easy. But the fact that to get this guy, we had to set up this op, and on the phone, Mitch has to say to Irene, just send me my guys. Like,
yeah, just some, like, I was waiting for like that to happen.
I was
like, waiting. I needed it to happen.
Like you said, it was so Rapp centric. Every action scene is Rapp driven, and I'm loving it. But then right when I want to scratch that itch of a Scott Coleman, a Bruno McGraw, a Maslick, a Charlie Wicker, Kyle gives it to us.
We get them all.
He gives it full on. And the fact that scene had to cook, right? Like, Coleman had to come in wearing the jalaba to cover his hair, and only his eyes could be seen. He shows up at the door. He's like, damn, Mitch, I was fishing on the med. Like, and then everyone else has their own little entrance. I just think, and Charlie Wicker comes in the motorbike to scout out his perch. I thought all of that was so much fun. It was cooking, it was stewing, and it built up to an incredible set action piece. So for all that, I don't think Semenov was taken down too easily.
All right, I shouldn't say taken down too easily. I thought, like, you're right. The later scenes where he's flipped really easily.
Yeah.
That just, I don't know. Maybe I'm picking too many nits.
A little, but that could ding your buy-in. I could see that.
Mm.
The same way when Matthew Fournier is escorted by only these 2 motorbikes, and he's allowed in the passenger seat of a car after being captive.
Really underestimated.
That's a stretch. That's a stretch on buy-in for me. So I'll give you a couple of dings here along the way.
That was a cool action set piece, though. Like how he got out, he pulls like a Fast and the Furious, pull the brake, grab the driver as I like roll out the side door to break my fall, punch one guy, and then use my speed to sprint away. Like, boom, Rapp figured it out.
And I liked his time with the insurgents. And we have a candidate for a winner of this book. If it's not Fadine, the museum director, librarian guy from the first half, Kadir here is just a very endearing character.
Like he's got to be a one of our winners, because
and his 15-year-old nephew, that together they are just they got to be the winners, and the sacrifice he makes.
Yeah, that was touching, and I like it. I don't know. I felt for it, and I felt that Kyle developed that character really well, and to get us to feel for it, and like putting some of the, I'm not the quote guy, but like some of the quotes where he at the end he's talking to Mitch about you cling to life. Sometimes
Yeah.
you need to, forget about that, and he wasn't doing it like what every other novel has depicted people of his culture essentially doing a suicide bomb. He was doing it for they took everything away from him, and like
Yeah.
just the way Kyle was writing his like schizophrenicness
Yeah.
was insane to read. Like this, I was an engineer, like like I had a life, like and then he would pop back like to him, and the way Rapp was able to get him to buy in by giving him these small little tasks and
Yeah.
like sort of stimulating him. I don't know. I really enjoyed reading that character. Those scenes were great.
I 100%. I really enjoyed that character. And I got the sense, so there are two things going on, because operationally, this is very sound. He was an engineer, and Rapp even picked up on the beams and the structural supports. And Scott Coleman even says that's where all the shooters will be if they're doing a prisoner transfer. So like taking out this building operationally is the best thing to do. And he's like, but nobody can survive. There's nobody who can survive that explosion if we bring the truck in. And Rapp's like, let me worry about that. So Rapp gets, tactically, this is a good move, but he's never sent one of his guys to his death, his own death. No.
Yeah, he says that too. Right?
He's like, I never used a suicide bomber, which also, thinking tactically, kind of gives them cover. Because then it won't look like the West. It will look like an insurgency, because we wouldn't, and most people know Irene Kennedy wouldn't make Mitch
do that.
Use suicide bombers and let his men do that. Scott wouldn't do it, right, in his company. So it's cover from being the West. Yet at the same time, Rapp has this, I think, this clear sense of truth that this is what Kadir wants. Like, he has all his mental issues, so he may not be thinking clearly, but it is the right move to allow Kadir to do this. It's almost the closure that this man needs, and Rapp will not make him. I don't even know if Rapp formally asks him to do it, but he more like leads the horse to water. And I don't get the sense he's manipulating a vulnerable person.
I know. I was thinking that too.
And I think he's building a connection, and there's this clarity. I can't explain it. And Kyle's words capture it perfectly when they're talking about that. And he sees in Mitch, he's like, you're clinging on too dearly to life. You get this clarity that Kadir has a purpose and a mission, and to not let him do it would be more damaging. To make Kadir live post fact that he could have been more helpful in exacting revenge on the Russians and stopping this plot, and then not letting him do that, in some sense is more damaging to Kadir's mental health and his future than letting him have this moment.
Yeah, I think when Rapp saw him building the bomb, like it kind of like tossing it around like it was hot potato, I think he kind of knew that this guy, he just couldn't build up enough, couldn't stay sane for enough minutes to formulate a plan like this. And Rapp was just giving him an opportunity to further, to get it a little bit quicker than what maybe Kadir would have eventually gotten to. He
would have just blown himself up by mishandling the bomb, or like dropping it. And Rapp's giving him a purpose instead of just a tragic, sad ending. This is a mission.
It's funny. I did feel like that when I was reading. I was like, "This is Rapp." It's like the only like weird sticky thing. But in the end, I sort of came down on the line that it wasn't. It was Kadir's choice.
Yeah.
Rapp even asked him like multiple times, like, "Are you okay doing? Like, you don't have to like. Are you okay doing this?"
Yeah. Another thing is the cultural aspect that's been built up of what isolation in a culture that is so hospitable means. Like to be quote unquote kicked out of your village. That's more than just not having a physical home. That is not having a community. Like it's such a major thing that I think Rapp picks up on. It's probably worse for this guy to live knowing he has to be this hermit, isolated, never going to be accepted. And just, it was a fitting ending, and it's terrible that it had to get to that point, but also what we know about Semenov's plan, this is permanently damaging. Like, if we buy Semenov's tests and his research, there's no coming back to this. Another fuzzy moment here is it out of character when Mitch tells Scott Coleman and the boys, I really honestly don't care if anybody walks out of this building alive. Researcher, scientist, prisoner. I don't know if that's just Rapp admitting the mission is so important and the actual prisoners are done. They're toasted for life. Like they're already victims. It's okay with blowing them all up. Did you feel that was also a moral gray zone?
Yeah, another thing that was like they're sort of threading this line of is that the Mitch Rapp way. I get the scientists,
The
like
prisoners.
they're complicit in the act. He's always been, like he's always been like that with those kind of people. The prisoners, on the other hand, man, I don't know. But he then goes out of his way to like be kind to the prisoners that they release from the truck they steal at the end.
That's true.
And even though in his mind he says, "I don't know why I'm doing this," considering that these guys are probably Hezbollah, like some sort of terror, associated. But at the moment they're no longer my enemy.
But those guys didn't have the psychoses and the withdrawal symptoms that are permanent and lasting.
Right.
They weren't transferred there yet, so there is hope for them. That's why he let the prisoners go. But the ones in the building going through the program already, I think Rapp is just kind of resigned to saying the damage is done.
I guess he saw what he saw what happened with Kadir and was like, "Oh, this is not good." So
yeah, not good at all. There is a
well,
scene too on their escape where they're kind of looking through thermals or infrareds and they see two guards like checking a fence or something, and they don't actually want to shoot them. Like, our mission's done, we're packing up and flying out of here. Do you remember? There was a line about that too.
Oh, it was like they saw these guys coming, and he tells Charlie, "Are they coming to us? If not,
Let them go."
let them go because it's not worth essentially not worth giving up the sniper position."
Exactly.
And he didn't have a beat on him from where he was. He could just see them. He could get a shot off.
And if they're not a threat, that's a tactical.
Yeah, it was a tactical thing. Yeah. But those little things were just like,
They make you think. Maybe it's indicative of a changing world, a changing landscape.
Could be. Yeah, very much so.
Like, the enemy is not the enemy of the early 2000s. Everyone who's dressed this way and military-aged man, shoot him if it's not. It's not black and white anymore. I think maybe it's indicative of that. The same way around the campfire, Rapp was reflecting in the first few chapters about, is the Taliban even the enemy anymore? Is Al-Qaeda even the enemy anymore?
Right.
Who's the enemy? I think it's blurring the edges in the field, and I think making the job that much harder. And so Rapp able to cut through that and say, Kadir's going to do what he has to do, kind of gives, like I'll say again, clarity or definition to the mission parameters. And then by saying the guards just walking around who aren't a threat to us, we can let go, is again another way to find definition in a battlefield that is so blurred.
Yeah, no, I agree. So what do you think of the ending here? We get this big action set piece, the bomb goes off, we get some guns going, the boys do their action. Ultimately, Rapp's able to get Semenov out with, I thought like we kind of knew that they were spending this time because he tells us like he's been with Bruno McGraw feeding, like he's the only one who's able to go out because Bruno's like as American as they come, New York as they come, I guess is what he says.
Yo, I actually got the quote on Bruno.
Okay, go.
Only because I'm reading this chapter and I'm like, this dude is my spirit animal. I'm like, I don't know why. I was jiving with this. So first off, he gives a physical description, which is not much me, but he says, quote, McGraw was a top-notch shooter, but also as American as someone could get. Voice, gait, mannerisms. You could dress that guy up like Lawrence of Arabia, and he'd still be the personification of a Bruce Springsteen song. Like, there it is. That's Kyle. Kyle being Kyle. But then this is the part that I really connected with. Of all Scott Coleman's men, McGraw was the most susceptible to the crushing boredom that was inevitable in battle. While Charlie Wicker's idea of a good time was letting snow pile up on him while he waited for an elk to wander by, McGraw was Manhattan born and bred. He loved action, whenever and whenever he can get it. Combat, sports, fast cars, Las Vegas binges. Give him something to do and he went full blast. Give him nothing to do, and he went slowly insane.
That's totally you.
I identify Bruno McGraw as all of a sudden, one of my favorite characters on the team now.
That's totally like, yeah. So we get the sense, stuff's going on, and he even drops that, Scott's been practicing on this mock-up that he built out of like trash and a simulator on a computer to be able to fly that helicopter. It was, pretty intensive operation that they were able to pull off, bringing in these other shooters from the, various places in the Arab world, relying on them. Everything had to go off without a hitch, doing an old fashioned stakeout to get that prisoner transport truck. Pretty ingenious. I was pretty bought into that final mission.
Yeah.
And then, he's able to get Semenov out alive and turns him pretty easily.
Yeah.
So that I kind of already mentioned my thing on that. The last thing I wanted to mention with the ending here is, did you have a bone chilling like moment when we get the call to Losa, like with the gun?
Great scene. I think if the set action piece was this race to the finish line, a good Mitch Rapp book has this race to the finish line, jetting to the end with this huge set piece. Then you got to kind of come down from it. And this could be tough, right? Like wrapping up the op, turning over Semenov was whatever. But you want something else to kind of satisfy as this post-climactic action denouement. Both the Losa phone call at the Prague safe house and the epilogue with Mitch coming home, both of those as an ending absolutely satisfy. So on our patron call last night, a couple people, I know Mark, had some ideas on the ending. Was it really this knockout ending, this major Kyle going out with a bang? And I'm going to say I'm glad it wasn't, in the sense of all of a sudden somebody gets blown up, like Charlie Wicker's dead. No, like I didn't want something that was that rattling to the series. And I don't think Kyle wanted to do that to Don, like something major with Irene, or someone else said like Mitch becomes president, like this big bang of a life.
Mitch loses an arm. Yeah.
Mitch loses his arm, right? Now he's walking around with a peg leg, whatever. I was almost glad it didn't culminate in something like that. And instead, we're kind of taken down into this different space of thrilling, but not action-packed. And so the Losa phone call is thrilling. He's wondering, do I have to get out of town? I tried to call Claudia, right? I made an attempt to make friends, to say the debt is settled. Neither of us got fully what we wanted, but Claudia, you're alive for what I offered Mitch. And now, even though I betrayed Mitch, he can forgive me for that. And by forgive, I mean not kill me. And I won't have to spend my life looking over my shoulder. And here I am like, oh, damn, is Mitch going to take the deal? Is Losa going to have to, be watching behind him every step of the way? And Mitch just gets the upper hand in a really creative way.
Immediately.
And the best part is they're locking down what they thought was a safe house they just moved into. They're locking it down. He's calling in shooters. They're barricading. They're putting the blinds down. He's afraid, even if the glass is bulletproof, that Mitch can still get to him. And all of a sudden he turns and he sees the Glock on the table. That was chilling. And Julian's like, what are we doing? We got to get out of here. He's like, now we're good. It was just this subtle symbol of Rapp saying, I could fuck you anytime I want to.
Right.
I could do whatever I want to. And guess what? You helped save Claudia. The debt is paid. And I thought that was it. It was almost as satisfying as like Grisha Azarov and Mitch parting ways.
Sure.
This gentleman's agreement, right? Like we're both almost as good as one another. We've had our things in the past, but as professionals, there's a code. And like rival gangs, there's at least some sense of street code, between them and when something's going down. And I just felt it was this way for two men at the top of their game to say, the game recognized game, and Mitch say, I'm better than you. And Losa has to accept it because he tried to betray him. I just thought it was a really, really bone-chilling, thrilling, but not action-packed way to wrap up.
Yeah, no, you took the words right out of my mouth. I think this idea that Rapp is always you can't do anything to beat him. Like he's just going to be there. And I don't know how the hell he got that gun in the house. Do you
Oh,
think was he there?
dude, I'd love a
Was it
novella.
was he actually there? Does he have someone on the
Do you have someone on
inside?
the inside, right? Does
Yeah,
Irene or Claudia have someone on the
right.
inside?
But his phone is traced there, but that could be easily fixed. So
That
yeah,
could
I
be
don't know.
done.
I would love to know like how the gun got there. We should have asked Kyle.
Yeah, I was thinking back on it, and again, not to armchair quarterback. I'm going to try to not do that anymore on the pod. I was thinking, and this is only like after my fourth time reading it. How cool would it have been if there was a little line about either one of the guards or some assistant to Julian wearing the dress shoes? Because
Mm,
a through line had been Rapp's dress
those
shoes
shoes,
that
those
he didn't
shoes.
want to
But
part with. So I was like,
Losa would have known that though. Yeah,
would Los have seen his shoes at any point, or
Losa had his guy make the
he hooked
shoes.
him up? Yeah.
So Losa would have known, like, even if he hadn't seen him, he'd be like, those like amazing shoes.
But
Like,
can you imagine like an assistant to Julian or something being like, "Where'd you get those shoes?" He goes, "Oh, I just picked them up, at a shop or whatever." And I don't know, just something about the shoes to kind of tie it all together
right,
to let us know
right.
either Rapp was there or Rapp was on the
Oh,
inside.
that would have been a good idea if, like, the guy got shoes. Like, oh, I bought it from this guy outside. Like, he just sold it to me.
Yeah, like the shoes and the Glock or something sitting there too.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was good, and I know you were a sucker for the epilogue.
Yeah, dude, you absolutely know it. You know it. And I'm not going to try to brag. I knew the bike was in the trunk. I really did.
You did, you did.
Oh, I knew Rapp was coming home with that bike. I just knew it in my bones. I didn't know it was going to be an $8,000 bike that he got parts from all over the world to soup up this bike as he did. But I knew when Rapp came home, especially when we got the details about it being months and months and months. And
Mm.
Claudia's like, Anna's going to eventually catch on. She can't go horseback riding forever. At some point, she's going to wonder about Mitch and our life and where we are, what we're doing. And I knew he was going to bring home the bike. I
Mm.
just had a feeling. But it was perfect with the luggage and go get it out of the car.
It was perfect.
Oh,
That was great. How about you want to give us some scores? So you kind of brought this up when we first got on. We should have talked about this last year with Oath of Loyalty. I think we were kind of like just getting our stride with the scorecards. We were just rolling with it. But that's the only book that we have a scorecard for.
Oath
Every
of
other
Loyalty,
book
yeah.
we gave it both a letter grade and a score out of 10. So in old for old time's sakes, should we give Code Red an OG ABCDF 1 out of 10 score, and then we can go into the actual scorecard?
I think we have to because every other Mitch Rapp book is 1 through 10 and a letter based score, A, B, C, D, F. I think we have to do that. I definitely want to do the scorecard too. And maybe Oath of Loyalty. I was a bit of a prisoner of the moment, I think, with that book. So maybe one day we go back and give our 1 through 10 A, B, C, D on that as
We
well.
give it each a 44. What the
44 out of 50. Yeah. Okay. I will say this before we get into the numbers and ratings of it all.
You give it a 9 on plot.
And I'm looking at it compared to what Semenov and Losa were built up as villains. There's no way Legion, the 3 girls or sisters or whatever, deserve a really good villain score because Losa and Semenov are done so well.
They're really good.
It makes Legion look like just super. What the hell was that? So I think I overgraded a bit on Oath of Loyalty. I was a bit of a prisoner of the moment, how much I like that book. However, I stand by this. And when I said to Kyle last year, it was his consent to kill. I'm gonna actually double down on this. If it were a combined book with Enemy at the Gates, I think if you put Enemy at the Gates and Oath of Loyalty together, I stand by that arc was Kyle's consent to kill. It was him doing a really major shakeup for the series. It had a huge change to America, a huge change to Mitch's personal life and the Manassas, group. with the Nashes. So I think I'm going to stand by that. I will admit my scores are a little inflated on it looking back, but I still loved it if I think of it as part 2 to Enemy at the Gates.
I mean, in the old days, it would just be one book, right? Like Consent to Kill is freaking huge.
Yeah, it would have been one book, or we would have got the third book in that trilogy, kind of closing it out, instead of jumping to the Code Red, kind of side story. I just think there were some things that we are not privy to about edits, changes, updates, external pressures. So we don't know anything, but I still stand by. I loved Enemy at the Gates to Oath of Loyalty. The scores may have been a little inflated at the time, but I love them.
So I think I got to give this book a solid B. Maybe B plus.
Okay.
Again, 80, 88, 89 range. 8.8, 8.9 range. Not the best Kyle, but good. Not definitely not the worst Kyle.
Yeah. I think I'm going absolutely solid B plus. Could flirt with A minus. So 8.9. 8.9.
I guess an 8.9 is a B plus. So B plus.
8.9 B plus, maybe an 8.95. You can round it up if you want. A minus by a hundredth of a decimal. If you wanna really go through it with a fine tooth comb. I am giving it a B plus, but I think it was a stellar book. Most people have pegged it, from what I've heard online and with different people I've spoken to, as a middle of the pack Mitch Rapp book overall, and a middle of the pack Kyle Mills Mitch Rapp book. I'm thinking like not in the top 10 of all Mitch Rapp books, but definitely holding down a 12-ish spot, somewhere around there. And not top 5 of Kyle's, but definitely holding down a 6-7 spot for sure.
All right, so we have The Survivor, Order to Kill, Enemy of the State, Red War, Lethal Agent, Total Power, Enemy at the Gates, Oath of Loyalty, and now Red War.
Code Red,
sorry.
Do we do the scorecard and then say where it fits in Kyle's books, or?
Yeah, let's do our scorecard. So action. What do you give the action here?
I love that it was rap centric. Every action sequence hit. We're in Sarakib at the negotiation, the final action piece, the little things in between when Rapp's at these safe houses. We didn't even talk the compressor scene.
No, I know. Yeah.
When the guys are hassling him for the protection money, the racketeering. I think because of all that, I got to go a solid 9. Most of the action hit, and it lasted start to finish. What do you say?
Yeah, I was in an 8, and when you started like laying more things out, I bumped it up to an 8.5. Well, it was solid. It wasn't like action packed, but there was a lot of big set pieces that I liked. So give it a solid 8.5.
Okay. The plot. I want to hear from you because we had some inconsistencies, some buy-in things, a plot that wasn't flowing specifically early on. Where do you land on a 1 through 10 score for plot?
I think because if I was grading the second half of the book by itself, I would go pretty high, like a 9. But when I think about the first half of the book, that was leaning more like 7 and below. So I don't know, 7.5. The plot didn't hook me. And I think ultimately this is like one of the problems with being a side quest story is like, it took some time to get me bought into it. And maybe I'm digging it in the wrong spot here. Like I was like, why do I care about this book? And it took a while to get there. And then I finally did. I think it was truly like post, him running away from Saqib, and once we were past that part, there was pieces of building up to that I liked, but once we get past that and we're pretty much just Mitch on his own, like that's when it started humming, and that's when we started getting into the writing with Ben Friedman, the trade and Israel and that kind of stuff. Like, so
yeah,
I don't know, 7.5, 8 around there.
I think that's fair. The biggest ding is it took a while to get going. I just remember from the prologue in Salerno through a few chapters, I was like, don't know why I care about what Los is doing and what this terrorist Arab network might be doing with the drugs. But you're right. once we got to the Ben Friedman of it all, once Losa turned on Rapp and Rapp had to find a way to navigate Losa turning on him with the cell phone he planted in the guy, culminating from that point, culminating up to when he talks with Semenov and gets the big picture and he gets filled in on Semenov's asymmetrical warfare plans. It got it for me. It took a while. Because of that, I'm going to go 8. I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt with an 8 on that.
All right, what about buy-in, Mike?
Yeah, I think you brought up 2 things tonight that made it hard for me. Rapp being just escorted in the passenger seat of a car as Matthew Fournier out of the Semenov facility where he was essentially a prisoner under watch. The transportation was way weak. That lost me. The early buy-in of the drug trade. But the problem is the action had me bought in. We open with Scott and team with the helicopter. Remember the double fake with the helicopter? When they roll out.
I forgot about that scene. That was a cool scene.
Oh, remember how much I went on and ran my mouth in part 1 about Rapp reflecting on what is home and where is his place with Claudia, with Anna, and Virginia, or the smells of the open fire food cooking in the desert and the sand. I was bought in that conversation. I was bought in with the early action. I think because of that early buy-in, then it kind of waned. Then the buy-in, once we were with Rapp operating solo, since that's sustained for a really long time, I want to settle on a 4. Is that being too generous, Chris? I have to go down.
No, I think I was going to do the same thing because I don't want to ding it twice.
Right, for the
what I kind of already said. I could have just given plot an 8, 8.5, and then given buy-in a 3. Makes the same difference. But that's the tricky thing with buy-in and plot here. It's sometimes they have overlap. But I don't want to ding it twice because there were parts, like you said, once we got humming with Mitch, I was fully bought in. And once I understood why I should care about this story, then I was bought in. Just it took a little bit of time to get there.
Yep. Okay.
And I like to piggyback on that. The bag, I thought, Losa, we kind of already had this feeling that, kind of like a guy not to be fucked with. Really liked his character development. And then equally, Semenov was a pretty good villain. Like, I wouldn't have, ultimately, these guys are gone, but I feel like these could have been characters that, if Kyle was continuing to write, could have been around for a long time.
Yeah, I think you're right. And before we give our thoughts here, there's a couple other things with Losa that I wanted to bring up. And one is when you gotta ask yourself, what would Kennedy do? And your answer to what would Irene Kennedy do, you do the opposite, or you do the same thing, but in a darker way. Like, what would Kennedy do, guided by patriotism, loyalty, friendship? She would move mountains for you. You got to take that same answer, but flip it upside down and say, what would Damian Losa do? And the fact that Claudia warns Mitch about that, I think it's perfect. So Claudia gives this description. I think this is crazy. Here we go. Quote, Claudia's description of Losa as an evil reflection of Irene Kennedy kept turning over in Rapp's mind. What would Kennedy, unbound by sentiment, loyalty, or patriotism, do in this situation? How would she view an utterly expendable operative with no information that could be useful to the enemy? It wasn't a difficult question to answer. She'd throw him to the wolves. And it's like, now Rapp is making decisions on the ground knowing Damian Losa would do that to him because Irene Kennedy would do it. And that's it. If that demanded for her mission.
Right.
I thought that was really cool. And then Losa, his reading on Rapp is really, really keen because at one point he's wondering about, was Mitch the right guy for the job to send in? And he's thinking, quote, historically, Mitch Rapp wasn't a man prone to expending energy on petty revenge. It was a philosophy Losa himself shared. Killing needed to serve a tangible purpose, neutralizing threats, setting examples, eliminating competitors. But emotional satisfaction, that was for psychopaths and amateurs, 2 things that Mitch Rapp was not. That tells me Losa has Rapp's number, and
Yeah.
Rapp and Kennedy, and Claudia even warns Losa's number. So I think there's this really cool cat and mouse going back and forth that elevates Damian Losa for me. And then the phone calls. When Losa calls when Losa calls Claudia asking for Mitch's forgiveness and to basically tug on that warrior code. I thought the conversations with Losa on the phone were really, really cool. And those insights into who he was elevate him. I think I'm going to go as high as four on the villains.
4. Okay.
Four.
I'll meet you there with the 4. I agree. Solid villains. I might even go 4.5.
I'm toying with 4.5. Yeah. I'm going to stay
All
at a
right,
4.
we'll
I
stay
think
at
I was
4.
generous on buy-in. I'm going to stay at 4.
All right. What about the good guys, Mike?
The good guys are a 5. I mean, whether it was Fadin, the museum director, Kadir, the old man at the end, the engineer, I'm a scientist. Those were some good guys that you didn't expect to have as good guys. And then the description of Bruno McGraw.
Yeah,
that was fun.
I think it's like getting the gang back together one last time.
Yep.
Like that's what's sung to me. Like I love this. I don't know why I love it, but this little line where Rapp like goes and finds Charlie Wicker in his hideout, and all he simply does is like he sticks his like he wouldn't be able to tell that he's there, but he just sticks his hand out from underneath, like to let Mitch know that he's there, and he knows that Mitch is there, and then like retreats back in. Like that was just so funny to me. Yeah, no, the good guys got to be a 5.
The fact that we get them at the beginning too, we get to see the op from the get go, and then they're gone for most of the book. And Mitch says, "Send me my guys." At the end, it's just awesome. I loved how that was done. Setting, Chris, what do you think? I mean, Syria plays a big role in this book. Were you satisfied going around the different towns of Syria?
I was. I'm not as familiar on. This is like my own fault in terms of. I felt like I understood Ukraine, like the Ukraine story with Brad's novel more because I've been reading a lot more news about it. Obviously, I was reading about the Syrian war when it broke out, and then just like most things, they stopped covering it, right? Because it's been going on for so long. I popping around from different village. Like Kyle does a good job describing various things, describing that town where the insurgents who helped Rapp in his escape, describing Damascus, or not, I guess he wasn't in Damascus. He was in Aleppo at the very end, right? Like that's where he was holding out.
No, they planned the op in Idlib. And then when they got out to Cyprus or Greece in the very end.
The very end, they went to Cyprus. Yeah. I don't know. I think Kyle did a good job of describing, but I don't know the accuracy of it. Like, what would you say, Mike?
I think it was good. I was transported there. At one point, the different towns and villages maybe got jumbled, where they didn't have enough of their own flavor. But for me to have a mental map of everything. But the ones that stood out were the opening campfire scene where they're rescuing the hostages, and Scott Coleman jumps in, and they're shooting up that empty house, that farmhouse. When they roll out the backside of the chopper, I thought that I got the smells, the sights, the sounds from really early on in the book. I was transported there. That was Afghanistan, right? That was actually the Hindu Kush.
Yep.
So I love that. Syria got a little jumbled, but then again, I'm thinking of the building in Sarakib with the crowd protesting outside, crumbling buildings. The Rapp jumps from one to the other over this like 15-foot gap. Meeting, this negotiation on the top floor of a crumbling building. Thought that was cool. I think I really liked it. And then as we get towards the Mediterranean, Rapp is able to escape from the transport by rolling down a hill, kind of in a more wooded area, like a woodsy area, and then find the village with the insurgents there. I felt like I was taking on a good tour of the landscape.
Yeah.
The Israeli border maybe was described well too. I didn't have a visual of the checkpoint, but I knew the steps of the process.
Sure.
A visual there, I think, could have really helped. I think I have to go 3.5 is disingenuous. I'm going to go 4, though it's probably the lower end of a 4.
I know, like I wanted to give it a 3.5, but is that like too rude? It's like I'm gonna stick with 3.5.
Yeah, I know. I think that's justifiable. I do.
Yeah.
All right, you want to give us a winner, and then we'll come back and judge this cover by the book. We got 4 covers, believe it or not, that I was able to scrounge up. So.
Wow, 4 covers for a book that just came out 2
I
weeks
think
ago.
most people have only really seen the main one, the American print, but we found the UK, the Australian, and a random one that was called Library Binding. I don't know what that means or where you'll find it, but it was listed as the Library Binding. So
Okay. All right. I mean, come on. Who's the winner of this book, Mike?
dude, it's the Syrians.
Yeah, it is. It's you can pick any of them. Kadir, you could pick the museum guy. You could pick Kadir's nephew. I felt like Kyle, and maybe I'm saying too much because he does do a good job of setting up these other, Syrian characters, kind of showing like what life is, even that like those people in the village. Yeah, I think that's that's my winner.
Yep, and we talked about that. I'm going to try to find something different here. I could say the team up, when Scott and the guys are training for the op.
Bike.
The bike at the end. Dude, I have to say that. I thought it was a absolutely perfect epilogue for Kyle to go out, not necessarily on a bang of something major happens, but on a bang in terms of tying up what he did for the series.
Yeah,
it is a
it was
perfect.
Fitting.
If you throw in the dad comment early on,
right?
When Anna calls
that's what
him
Kyle
dad,
brought to the series. So
exactly, and
the best thing that he brought to the series. So
right, and Mitch wondering like, whoa, if that's going to be what's going on here, what does it mean to be a father? What is the responsibilities of this? Yet I was away. Yet I was doing something that's going to give Anna and other kids like her in America a future, right? So he had to do that. But then as a father, he wanted to make up for it. Claudia says he spoils the girl, and he didn't care. And I love the little tiny detail of the effort he went into to get bike parts to assemble this thing, custom make it, because he knows how much it means to her. And that was his coming home gift. Yet, of course, Mitch being Mitch, wouldn't just take it out of the trunk and give it to her. He flips her the keys and says, grab my bag. Like, grab my duffel. That was just hysterical. And so what a great ending. I got to give it to the bike scene. If I were going to find a runner-up, though, because I wanted to say this too, it's got to be these phone calls. I was intrigued when Losa calls Claudia or Mitch calls Irene, and different people are tracking each other's phone calls, and he's using the burner phones. I felt like some of these conversations and the dialogue really helped the book because most of it were just with Mitch, and I loved it. It was his perspective on the ground, going through what he's going through, getting captured, escaping, being transported by Syrians, handed off to the Russians, the Israelis.
Does that like 3 times.
Right. And then even, when he called Irene, they first brought up Ben Friedman. And I'm like, oh, hell yeah, let's go. When Claudia looks at her phone and sees DL, like, there's so much suspense built into those simple phone calls because the dialogue is just going to nail it, that for that to be the scene I'm taking away from Rapp for made it worth it. Where there were some other things, if we're taking away from Rapp to see somebody doing God knows what off to the side, I wouldn't care as much. But all of those dialogues paid off.
And a winner is Kyle for giving us 9 great Mitch Rapp books.
Kyle obviously is the winner, and we made that clear in last week's episode. That interview, so happy our patrons could come on, the best fans in the world who followed him, say what he meant to him. And of course that limerick, we wanted to give him a good old Mitch Rapp pod limerick to go. So definitely Kyle's the winner, and so glad we got to spend time with him last week.
Yeah.
We don't have a final score, though, until we talk about these covers. Chris, what's your first reaction? Because I don't think a lot of people saw cover B, cover C, cover D. I'll put it on the graphic, so if you want to see these covers, check our social media, check our website. Listen on Spotify. When you listen on Spotify, you will see the cover artwork in the app. What's your first reaction to B, C, and D?
Well, can we talk about A first, real quick?
Sure, let's get that out of the way. We talked a little bit about it.
We talked a little bit about it, and I really like this cover. And
Yes.
like it makes perfect sense if you want to pull in like the whole Captagon of it all, like in terms of this. Even though that's sort of more affecting the mind, it's still, this drug that's having an effect on people, their entire health, like, the heart. You have this inverse Washington versus Moscow, this war that's going on. Red. I love the coloring. I love, like, this bleeding in between Moscow and the, essentially a stand-in for the United States and Moscow, right? Really like that cover. Okay, now the side covers. Intriguing. I have to say I'm intrigued. And I kind of like cover B.
Really? Whoa.
Yeah. And you know why? Because
why?
There's that scene. Now, it's not like the
getting
same
smuggled into Syria.
No, this is what I took as them getting out of the compound.
Oh.
Remember, Mitch is there with a wounded guy, and he's hearing these clicks
cutting
of like
the fence.
Of Bruno and the other Arab that was there cutting the fence. He's like, "Oh, I wish I hear it going on, but I wish it was just going faster."
You're right.
And I see this, and that just takes me back to that scene. So this is because he's on the inside of that barbed wire, getting out. If you look at it, so they actually drew it the right way. He'd be like escaping.
It's not going to look like this, bro. In the heat of battle, carrying the wounded dude, Bruno McGraw cutting thing. We should see a huge ogre of a man if Bruno's there.
I know, but they
one dude standing in a silhouette. It's too much of a running man for me, bro.
I know it is. It takes us back to
or standing man,
our standing man, running man series. But I will say I like the rip fence because it took me back to that scene, and I really like that scene. I listened to that scene a couple of times on the audiobook. It was one of the better scenes from the audiobook. So yeah,
it scene's good, but to be the leading scene on a cover, and this is the UK cover, so
they do some weird covers, man.
They do
weird ass covers,
and the layout of them is just a little strange too.
Yeah.
Okay, cover C though could be, except for one major flaw, could be one of the coolest covers I've ever seen.
Cover C is really cool, except for we don't have any snowy hills.
I have no idea. This is almost like the train. Why he's on the snowy, like mountainous area, fully kitted out, makes no sense to me. Like, this is a Jack Carr cover through and through. Like, I don't know what it's doing in the Mitch Rapp series, and particularly I don't know what it's doing for this book. It makes no sense. But it's probably going to sell like wildfire because this is the Australia cover. If I saw that cover anywhere in a bookstore, I'm buying it off the shelf. So it is objectively a nearly perfect cover. But if we're judging the cover by the book, it's a travesty.
Maybe that's supposed to represent like this, like Siberia.
Why?
Because Russia, like, the Russia element of it all.
If we never go there.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm grasping for straws here, Mike.
Travesty, dude. Travesty.
Okay, now what do you think about cover D? Do you know what that is? I don't know.
So that's that library binding one. I don't know why, but on Goodreads it was listed as one of the covers. I think it's really cool. I think I like that it brings in what I would call the Damascus element or the Syrian element,
right,
with the buildings. To me, I'll take that any day over the damn fence. Like, to put an actual building that brings me to a village in Syria, maybe the house where Rapp stuffs the dudes in the compressors. I can't believe we didn't bring that up.
Right.
Like,
the garage. Yeah.
This transports me to that mechanic shop, the garage, maybe, a mosque on the corner of a little of a town, a historical site where the war has been, even where the negotiations are happening. This is the street level of one of those buildings where they're negotiating.
Or where him and McGraw are doing the stakeout,
That everything, right, where they capture the transport. I think this cover of all four is the only one to me that, if we're going to judge a cover by the book, passes that test. Because you mentioned cover A, and I like the design, I like the simplicity. I think it really fits with what we started with Total Power, a very, very crisp two-tone. I know there's three or four colors here with the yellow, but it almost feels like it's two-tone just because the black backdrop. So I like the design of it, but the fact that the drug messes with your mind and not your heart, I was led to think this is some sort of drug that messes with your heart, myocarditis or something like that, that touches on those themes. So the heart meant a lot to me when we first got this cover. I was like, it's captivating.
Yeah, I thought like somehow a heart, like the heart was gonna like come into play.
And code red too, right? Like if somebody read lines in the hospital or something.
Right.
I thought the code red and the heart theme and the blood and the beating heart would play a little more of a role, and it didn't. The drug Captagon is unrelated essentially to that. Because of that, the cover, when I judge it by the book, falls a little flatter than just design principles. It's awesome. It's awesome on design principles, like C, cover C. But I don't have a good balance, a balance of a cover that hits all of those notes. And because of that, overall, got to give the covers a 3.
Oh, so I've been writing 3, 3.5, 4 like this whole time. I'm gonna split the difference. I'm gonna go 3.5.
Okay. Cover C is just freaking baller, that Australian version. Just too bad it doesn't fit the book at all. I mean, come on.
All right,
You might as well have a train going through there or power lines, honestly. I think I'd like it more with power lines just because it had friggin' power lines than I would a Snowy Mountain. All right, Chris, final scores
very
means
close.
I settle on a 42. You settle on a 41.
Yeah.
Good book, great ending. Parts of it were absolutely stellar. 48, 49, 50 level on a scorecard if we were isolating parts of it. The last third, I would say. Maybe even the middle third would probably be up there.
Yeah.
But overall, I don't know if it had the complete package.
I think it's in that solid B plus range.
Yeah.
Like it's double our score, and that's yours an 84, mine's an 82. It's B minus, B, solid B. So, all right, that's Code Red. It's kind of sad. Our last Kyle novel. We have a whole year to wait before we can talk about Don. Well, a whole year wait before we talk about him. We're definitely going to touch into some of his other books, but whole year to wait before we get his installment into the series. So, got some time. Think about it. Might want to reread this, revisit this. If you haven't had a chance, go check out Fade. So, yeah, what are we reading next, Mike?
Forget what we put down, but over on Thriller Podcast, we've got a lot of different things coming the next few months. We've got David McCloskey's Moscow X coming up. A couple of Andrews and Wilson books. I know Sons of Valor 3 is slated in the next couple of months. We're going back to Assassin in the Assassin series by Ward Larson with Assassin's Mark in November. And honestly, we want to cover Don Bentley, so I think we'll try to squeeze in at least one of his Clancy-verse books, the second one in his Matt Drake series. Let's keep that going. And we want to have him back. So we will be on the Thriller podcast feed in the near future. We'll be back here with Don Bentley in a little bit after we cover some of his books over there. And then we'll have the Scott Harvath podcast going as well. We're probably about the halfway point of that series. So towards the end of this calendar year, we're going to do a halfway recap of Brad Thor and the Scott Harvath series, maybe a little ranking of the first half there. And soon enough, we did Full Black. We'll be working our way towards Spy Master, in early 2024. So stick with us, all 3 feeds. Be sure to subscribe to No Limits, the Scott Harvath podcast, and the Thriller podcast to keep up with us until we return here with Don Bentley on the Mitch Rapp Pod.
Go check that out on our other feeds. All right, guys, we need to thank our patrons, our special operator, Sherry F., our special agents, Daryl, Kevin, George, Matt, Dawn, Peggy, Catherine, Ray, Bridget, Jeff, and Mark. Please subscribe, rate, and review using your favorite podcasting platform. You can find us at thrillerpod.com or on Twitter and Instagram at thrillerpodcast. And as always, just like Kyle, be Kyle.
Dude, one thing we got to add here in the post credits. Can't believe I missed it. We said earlier Anna is still 7, and she actually
Oh
is.
yeah,
She's in
she is
second
still.
grade.
She's in second. Well, second grade is like 8.
Uh, I think you start second. Well, it's summer break, right? Because remember, Mitch says you're going to win the summer book
Oh
report if
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
fly
yeah.
her over Masada, in the Holy Land.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think
So
she's
she's 7.
starting
She's
second
starting
grade.
second
She's
grade.
7, turning 8 at some point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. You're right. Well, I guess one more PS. We didn't put this in perspective. We kind of gave it a score. We said we would come back and say where we thought specifically this ranked with Kyle's books. So do you want to quickly redo the order again? Like what is your number one Kyle book?
Yeah, we did Kyle's rankings, right? Do we have that to refer back to?
Did we do that as an episode? I feel like we did.
I think we did. I think we
Did we do
definitely.
that when Kyle announced he was leaving?
Maybe we didn't. Oh yeah, we have it. Ranking Kyle's books. We did it episode 113, our Thank You Kyle episode.
Oh, we did. We just did it. I guess when we found out that Kyle was leaving, we decided to do that. All right, so we both put Lethal Agent, we both put Survivor, we both put Enemy at the Gates. Then it started to get a little wonky. You put Oath of Loyalty. Would you keep that there, Mike?
I think I'm keeping Enemy at the Gates and Oath of Loyalty together in the 3-4 spot because I honestly think of them as one book.
Okay.
I think of them as the cook's book. The cookbook.
I put Enemy of the State. I put Order to Kill. I was low on Oath of Loyalty. And then Red War, and I didn't like Total Power. We kind of flip flopped. Like you could put Red War and Total Power like kind of back to back.
Yeah, I think Enemy of the State and Order to Kill, if I reread them, maybe could bump up at some point. But regardless, how do you slot Code Red in here? This is tough.
It is tough.
When I read it, not considering the audiobook, which boy, that's coming soon. That'll come, people. That'll come. Not considering the
clear
audiobook.
out the decks for that one.
When I read this book, I was up and down like a roller coaster, but the highs of this book when I was reading it for the first time were super high. So we had our quibbles. We mentioned it on the last few episodes, but when this book was clicking, it was clicking to the point of I might put it. Third sounds crazy because I loved Enemy at the Gates. Maybe you're right. I have to bump down Oath of Loyalty and put this one in the 4 spot.
So I was thinking, all right, is it better than Total Power? Yes. Is it better than Red War? Yes. Is it better than Oath of Loyalty?
Probably yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it better than Order to Kill?
From what I remember, yes. But if I reread it, I'm not sure.
That's our Grisha. That's Grisha's introduction.
And that final set piece where he fights Grisha.
Yeah, is it better than Enemy at the State? I feel like this is.
I don't think so.
I think it's like right at Enemy of the State because I really like that book. It's a team up. It's kind of like a side quest.
I think you're right. So if I could redo this, I think you're right. I was going to keep them together.
It's not better than Enemy at the Gates.
No.
Not better than
Survivor.
The Survivor. Not better than Lethal Agent.
Which means it has to be the 4, 5, or 6 slot. The question is, what do I do with Oath of Loyalty and Enemy of the State? I'd have to reread both, to be honest, before I know. I'm going to play it safe and put it in the 5 spot right now.
Yeah.
With potential to move to 4.
I think it's a good. I think I'm also going to put it in the 5 spot. Yeah.
5 spot out of 9 for sure. Yeah. I think if I reread Order to Kill and Enemy of the State, I think those two have potential to go up. The Grisha Azarov scene in Order to Kill when he's fighting Scott. Oh. Was that B.B. Kincaid also? No, she's in the Survivor for sure.
She's in the Survivor.
She's in Total Power. She makes a return to that diner shootout. Yes.
Yeah.
Fred Mason wasn't in this one.
I know. Well, because we just had Scott was the helicopter pilot. So.
True. And Fred Mason was baller in Enemy at the Gates. So
yes.
Yeah.
Kylus doesn't like to tap. He likes like using people and then coming back to them,
And we didn't have Marcus Dumond. I'm going to leave it at that. If you guys could have seen my face.
I don't know why. I guess just Kyle just really just didn't like that character. So
I don't know. But when we recorded with Kyle, I wasn't going to push. But when he flat out denied the Marcus is alive theory, or that was Marcus theory. Oh, well, let's hope Marcus is alive. But my face, I don't know. I kind of sank.
You should. I saw it. I saw you like quickly, like, and
my
then,
whole
then you,
affect changed, dude.
Then you went back to podcast, like smile. You were like,
yeah, my face changed. Was it resting bitch face? I think so. It was. I'm missing Marcus.
You were just
face.
like,
oh, okay, and then we kept it moving.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was funny. So